I let the pebbles tumble to the ground from my fingers where they lie, haphazard or purposeful, an augury or an accident. If Chiron were here, he could read them, tell us our fortunes, but he is not here. What if he will not beg? I ask. Then he will die. They will all die. I will not fight until he does. His chin juts, bracing for reproach. I am worn out. My arm hurts where I cut it, and my skin feels coated with unwholesome sweat. I do not answer. Did you hear what I said? I heard, I say. Greeks will die. Chiron had said once that nations were the most foolish of mortal inventions. No man is worth more than another, wherever he is from. But what if he is your friend? Achilles had asked him, feet kicked up on the wall of the rose-quartz cave. Or your brother? Should you treat him the same as a stranger? You ask a question that philosophers argue over, Chiron had said. He is worth more to you, perhaps, but the stranger is someone else's friend and brother. So which life is more important? We had been silent. We were 14, and these things were too hard for us. Now that we are 27, they still feel too hard. He is half of my soul, as the poets say. He will be dead soon, and his honor is all that will remain. It is his child, his dearest self. Should I reproach him for it? I have saved Briseis, I cannot save them all. I know now how I would answer Chiron. I would say, there is no answer. Whichever you choose, you are wrong. Later that evening, I go back to Agamemnon's camp. As I walk, I feel the eyes on me, curious and pitying. They look behind me to see if Achilles is following. He is not. When I told him where I was going, it seemed to cast him back into the shadows. Tell her I am sorry, he said, his eyes down. I did not answer. Is he sorry because he has a better vengeance now? One that will strike down not just Agamemnon but his whole ungrateful army. I do not let myself dwell on this thought. He is sorry. It is enough. Come in, she says, her voice strange. She is wearing a gold-threaded dress and a necklace of lapis lazuli. On her wrists are bracelets of engraved silver. She clinks when she stands, as though she's wearing armor. She's embarrassed, I can see that. But we do not have time to speak, because Agamemnon himself is bulging through the narrow slit behind me. Do you see how well I keep her? He says. The whole camp will see in what esteem I hold Achilles. He only has to apologize, and I will heap the honors on him that he deserves. Truly, it is unfortunate that one so young has so much pride. The smug look on his face makes me angry, but what did I expect? I have done this. Her safety for his honor. This is a credit to you, mighty king, I say. Tell Achilles, Agamemnon continues, tell him how well I treat her. You may come any time you like to see her. He offers an unpleasant smile, then stands watching us. He has no intention of leaving. I turn to Briseis. I have learned a few pieces of her language, and I use them now. You are all right? Truly? I am, she replies, in the sharp sing-song of Anatolian. How long will it be? I don't know, I say, and I don't. How much heat does it take for iron to grow soft enough to bend? I lean forward and gently kiss her cheek. I will be back again soon, I say in Greek. She nods. Agamemnon eyes me as I leave. I hear him say, What did he say to you? I hear her answer, He admired my dress. The next morning, all the other kings march off with their armies to fight the Trojans. The army of Tyre does not follow. Achilles and I linger long over breakfast. Why should we not? There is nothing else for us to do. We may swim if we like, or play at draughts or spend all day racing. We have not been at such utter leisure since Pelion. Yet it does not feel like leisure. It feels like a held breath, like an eagle poised before the dive. My shoulders hunch, and I cannot stop myself from looking down the empty beach. We are waiting to see what the gods will do. We do not have to wait long. Chapter 28. That night, Phoenix comes limping up the shore with news of a duel. As the armies rallied in the morning, Paris had strutted along the Trojan line, golden armour flashing. He offered a challenge: single combat, winner takes Helen. The Greeks bellowed their approval. Which of them did not want to leave that day, to wager Helen on a single fight and settle it once and for all? And Paris looked an easy target, shining and slight, slim-hipped as an unwed girl. But it was Menelaus, Phoenix said, who came forward, roaring acceptance at the chance to regain his honour and his beautiful wife in one. The duel begins with spears and moves quickly to swords. Paris is swifter than Menelaus had anticipated, no fighter, but fast on his feet. At last the Trojan prince missteps and Menelaus seizes him by his long horsehair crest and drags him down to the earth. Paris's feet kick helplessly, his fingers scrabble at the choking chin strap. Then, suddenly, the helmet comes free in Menelaus's hand, and Paris is gone. Where the Trojan prince sprawled there is only dusty ground. The armies squint and whisper, "Where is he?" Menelaus squints with them, and so does not see the arrow, loosed from an ibex horn bow, along the Trojan line flying towards him. It punches through his leather armour and buries itself in his stomach. Blood pours down his legs and puddles at his feet. It is mostly a surface wound, but the Greeks do not know that yet. They scream and rush the Trojan ranks, enraged at the betrayal. A bloody melee begins. But what happened to Paris? I ask. Phoenix shakes his head. I do not know. The two sides fought on through the afternoon until another trumpet blew. It was Hector, offering a second truce, a second duel to make right the dishonour of Paris's disappearance and the shooting of the arrow. He presented himself in his brother's place to any man who dared answer. Menelaus, Phoenix said, would have stepped forward again, but Agamemnon prevented him. He did not want to see his brother die against the strongest of the Trojans. The Greeks drew lots for who would fight with Hector. I imagine their tension, the silence before the helmet is shaken and the lot jumps out. Odysseus bends to the dusty earth to retrieve it. Ajax. There is collective relief. He is the only man who has a chance against the Trojan prince. The only man, that is, who fights today. So Ajax and Hector fight, heaving stones at each other and spears that shatter shields until night falls and the heralds call an end. It is strangely civilized. The two armies part in peace, Hector and Ajax shaking hands as equals. The soldiers whisper, "It would not have ended so if Achilles were here." Discharged of his news, Phoenix gets wearily to his feet and limps on the arm of Automedon back to his tent. Achilles turns to me. He is breathing quickly, the tips of his ears pinking with excitement. He seizes my hand and crows to me of the day's events, of how his name was on everyone's lips, of the power of his absence, big as a cyclops, walking heavily amongst the soldiers. The excitement of the day has flared through him like flame in dry grass. For the first time he dreams of killing, the stroke of glory, his inevitable spear through Hector's heart. My skin prickles to hear him say so. "Do you see?" he says. "It is the beginning." I cannot escape the feeling that, below the surface, something is breaking. There is a trumpet the next morning at dawn. We rise and climb the hill to see an army of horsemen riding for Troy from the east. Their horses are large and move with unnatural speed, drawing light-wheeled chariots behind them. At their head sits a huge man, larger even than Ajax. He wears his black hair long like the Spartans do, oiled and swinging down his back. He carries a standard in the shape of a horse's head. Phoenix has joined us. The Lycians, he says. They are Anatolians, long allies of Troy. It has been a source of much wonder that they have not yet come to join the war, but now, as if summoned by Zeus himself, they are here. Who is that? Achilles points to the giant, their leader. Sarpedon, a son of Zeus. The sun gleams off the man's shoulders, sweat slick from the ride. His skin is dark gold. The gates open, and the Trojans pour out to meet their allies. Hector and Sarpedon clasp hands, then lead their troops into the field. The Lycian weapons are strange. Saw-toothed javelins and things that look like giant fishhooks for ripping into flesh. All that day, we hear their battle cries and the pounding hooves of their cavalry. There is a steady stream of Greek wounded into Machaon's tent. Phoenix goes to the evening's council, the only member of our camp not in disgrace. When he returns, he looks sharply at Achilles. Idomeneus is wounded, and the Lycians broke the left flank. Sarpedon and Hector will crush us between them. Achilles does not notice Phoenix's disapproval. He turns to me in triumph. Do you hear that? I hear it, I say. A day passes, and another. Rumours come thick as biting flies. Tales of the Trojan army driving forward, unstoppable and bold in Achilles' absence. Of frantic councils where our kings argue over desperate strategy, night raids, spies, ambushes. And then more. Hector ablaze in battle, burning through Greeks like a brush fire, and every day more dead than the day before. Finally, panicked runners, bringing news of retreats and wounds among the kings. Achilles fingers this gossip, turning it this way and that. It will not be long now, he says. The funeral pyres burn through the night, their greasy smoke smeared across the moon. I try not to think how every one is a man I know, knew. Achilles is playing the lyre when they arrive. There are 3 of them, Phoenix first, and behind him Odysseus and Ajax. I am sitting beside Achilles as they come. Farther off is Automedon, carving the meat for supper. Achilles' head is lifted as he sings, his voice clear and sweet. I straighten, and my hand leaves his foot where it has been resting. The trio approach us and stand on the other side of the fire, waiting for Achilles to finish. He puts down his lyre and rises. Welcome. You will stay for dinner, I hope. He clasps their hands warmly, smiling through their stiffness. I know why they have come. I must see to the meal, I mumble. I feel Odysseus's eyes on my back as I go. The strips of lamb drip and sear on the brazier's grill. Through the haze of smoke I watch them, seated around the fire as if they are friends. I cannot hear their words, but Achilles is smiling still, pushing past their grimness, pretending he does not see it. Then he calls for me, and I cannot stall any longer. Dutifully, I bring the platters and take my seat beside him. He is making desultory conversation of battles and helmets. While he talks, he serves the meal, a fussing host who gives seconds to everyone and thirds to Ajax. They eat and let him talk. When they are finished, they wipe their mouths and put aside their plates. Everyone seems to know it is time. It is Odysseus, of course, who begins. He talks first of things, casual words that he drops into our laps one at a time. A list, really. 12 swift horses and 7 bronze tripods and 7 pretty girls, 10 bars of gold, 20 cauldrons and more, bowls and goblets and armour, and at last, the final gem held before us, Briseis's return. He smiles and spreads his hands with a guileless shrug I recognize from Skyros, from Aulis, and now from Troy. Then a second list, almost as long as the first, the endless names of Greek dead. Achilles' jaw grows hard as Odysseus draws forth tablet after tablet, crammed to the margin with marks. Ajax looks down at his hands, scabbed from the splintering of shields and spears. Then Odysseus tells us news that we do not know yet, that the Trojans are less than 1,000 paces from our wall, encamped on newly won plain we could not take back before dusk. Would we like proof? We can probably see their watchfires from the hill just beyond our camp. They will attack at dawn. There is silence. A long moment of it, before Achilles speaks. "No," he says, shoving back treasure and guilt. His honour is not such a trifle that it can be returned in a night embassy, in a handful huddled around a campfire. It was taken before the entire host, witnessed by every last man. The king of Ithaca pokes the fire that sits between them. "She has not been harmed, you know, Briseis. God knows where Agamemnon found the restraint, but she is well kept and whole. She and your honour wait only for you to reclaim them." "You make it sound as if I have abandoned my honour," Achilles says, his voice tart as raw wine. "Is that what you spin? Are you Agamemnon's spider, catching flies with that tail?" "Very poetic," Odysseus says, "but tomorrow will not be a bard's song. Tomorrow the Trojans will break through the wall and burn the ships. Will you stand by and do nothing? That depends on Agamemnon. If he makes right the wrong he has done me, I will chase the Trojans to Persia if you like." "Tell me," Odysseus asks, "why is Hector not dead?" He holds up a hand. "I do not seek an answer. I merely repeat what all the men wish to know. In the last 10 years you could have killed him 1,000 times over, yet you have not. It makes a man wonder." His tone tells us that he does not wonder, that he knows of the prophecy. I am glad that there is only Ajax with him, who will not understand the exchange. "You have eked out 10 more years of life, and I am glad for you. But the rest of us," his mouth twists, "the rest of us are forced to wait for your leisure. You are holding us here, Achilles. You were given a choice and you chose. You must live by it now." We stare at him, but he is not finished yet. "You have made a fair run of blocking fate's path, but you cannot do it forever. The gods will not let you." He pauses to let us hear each word of what he says. "The thread will run smooth, whether you choose it or not. And I tell you as a friend, it is better to seek it on your own terms, to make it go at your pace than theirs." "That is what I am doing." "Very well," Odysseus says. "I have said what I came to say." Achilles stands. "Then it is time for you to leave."
"Not yet."
It is Phoenix.
"I too have something I wish to say."
Slowly, caught between his pride and his respect for the old man, Achilles sits. Phoenix begins.
"When you were a boy, Achilles, your father gave you to me to raise. Your mother was long gone, and I was the only nurse you would have, cutting your meat and teaching you myself. Now you are a man, and still I strive to watch over you, to keep you safe from spear and sword and folly."
My eyes lift to Achilles, and I see that he is tensed, wary. I understand what he fears, being played upon by the gentleness of this old man, being convinced by his words to give something up. Worse, a sudden doubt that perhaps, if Phoenix agrees with these men, he is wrong. The old man holds up a hand as if to stop the spin of such thoughts.
"Whatever you do, I will stand with you, as I always have. But before you decide your course, there is a story you should hear."
He does not give Achilles time to object.
"In the days of your father's father, there was a young hero, Meleager, whose town of Calydon was besieged by a fierce people called the Curetes.
I know this story, I think. I heard Peleus tell it long ago, while Achilles grinned at me from the shadows. There was no blood on his hands then, and no death sentence on his head. Another life.
In the beginning, the Curetes were losing, worn down by Meleager's skill in war,
Phoenix continues.
Then one day there was an insult, a slight to his honor by his own people, and Meleager refused to fight any further on his city's behalf. The people offered him gifts and apologies, but he would not hear them. He stormed off to his room to lie with his wife, Cleopatra, and be comforted.
When he speaks her name, Phoenix's eyes flicker to me.
At last, when her city was falling and her friends dying, Cleopatra could bear it no longer. She went to beg her husband to fight again. He loved her above all things and so agreed, and won a mighty victory for his people. But though he had saved them, he came too late. Too many lives had been lost to his pride, and so they gave him no gratitude, no gifts, only their hatred for not having spared them sooner.
In the silence, I can hear Phoenix's breaths, laboured with the exertion of speaking so long. I do not dare to speak or move. I am afraid that someone will see the thought that is plain on my face. It was not honour that made Meleager fight, or his friends, or victory, or revenge, or even his own life. It was Cleopatra, on her knees before him, her face streaked with tears. Here is Phoenix's craft. Cleopatra, Patroclus, her name built from the same pieces as mine, only reversed. If Achilles noticed, he does not show it. His voice is gentle for the old man's sake, but still he refuses. Not until Agamemnon gives back the honour he has taken from me. Even in the darkness, I can see that Odysseus is not surprised. I can almost hear his report to the others, his hands spread in regret. I tried. If Achilles had agreed, all to the good. If he did not, his refusal in the face of prizes and apologies would only seem like madness, like fury or unreasonable pride. They will hate him, just as they hated Meleager. My chest tightens in panic, in a quick desire to kneel before him and beg. But I do not. For like Phoenix, I am declared already decided. I am no longer to guide the course, merely to be carried, into darkness and beyond with only Achilles' hands at the helm. Ajax does not have Odysseus's equanimity. He glares, his face carved with anger. It has cost him much to be here, to beg for his own demotion. With Achilles not fighting, he is Aristosuchian. When they are gone, I stand and give my arm to Phoenix. He is tired tonight, I can see, and his steps are slow. By the time I leave him, old bones sighing onto his pallet, and return to our tent, Achilles is already asleep. I am disappointed. I had hoped, perhaps, for conversation, for two bodies in one bed, for reassurance that the Achilles I saw at dinner was not the only one. But I do not rouse him. I slip from the tent and leave him to dream. I crouch in loose sand in the shadow of a small tent. "Briseis," I call softly. There is a silence. Then I hear, "Patroclus." "Yes." She tugs up the side of the tent and pulls me quickly inside. Her face is pinched with fear. "It is too dangerous for you to be here. Agamemnon is in a rage. He will kill you." Her words are a rushing whisper. "Because Achilles refused the embassy," I whisper back. She nods, and in a swift motion snuffs out the tent's small lamp. "Agamemnon comes often to look in on me. You are not safe here." In the darkness, I cannot see the worry on her face, but her voice is filled with it. "You must go." "I will be quick. I have to speak with you." "Then we must hide you." He comes without warning. Where? The tent is small, bare of everything but pallet, pillows and blankets and a few clothes. The bed. She piles cushions around me and heaps blankets. She lies down beside me, pulling the cover over us both. I am surrounded by her scent, familiar and warm. I press my mouth to her ear, speaking barely louder than a breath. Odysseus says that tomorrow the Trojans will break the wall and storm the camp. We must find a place to hide you, among the Myrmidons or in the forest. I feel her cheek moving against mine as she shakes her head. I cannot. That is the first place he will look. It will only make more trouble. I will be all right here. But what if they take the camp? I will surrender to Aeneas, Hector's cousin, if I can. He is known to be a pious man, and his father lived as a shepherd for a time near my village. If I cannot, I will find Hector or any of the sons of Priam. I am shaking my head. It is too dangerous. You must not expose yourself. I do not think they will hurt me. I am one of them, after all. I feel suddenly foolish. The Trojans are liberators to her, not invaders. Of course, I say quickly. You will be free then. You will want to be with your...
Briseis?
The tent flap is drawn backwards and Agamemnon stands in the doorway. Yes? She sits up, careful to keep the blanket over me.
Were you speaking?
Praying, my lord.
Lying down?
Through the thick weave of wool I can see the glow of torchlight. His voice is loud, as if he is standing beside us. I will myself not to move. She will be punished if I am caught here. It is how my mother taught me, my lord. Is it not right?
You should have been taught better by now. Did not the godling correct you?
No, my lord.
I offered you back to him tonight, but he did not want you.
I can hear the ugly twist in his words.
If he keeps saying no, perhaps I will claim you for myself.
My fists clench, but Briseis only says, Yes, my lord. I hear the fall of cloth and the light disappears. I do not move, nor breathe until Briseis returns beneath the covers. You cannot stay here, I say. It is all right. He only threatens. He likes to see me afraid. The matter-of-factness in her tone horrifies me. How can I leave her to this, the leering and lonely tent, and bracelets thick as manacles? But if I stay, she is in greater danger. I must go, I say. Wait. She touches my arm. The men. She hesitates. They are angry with Achilles. They blame him for their losses. Agamemnon sends his people among them to stir up talk. They have almost forgotten about the plague. The longer he does not fight, the more they will hate him. It is my worst fear. Phoenix's story come to life. Will he not fight? Not until Agamemnon apologizes. She bites her lip. The Trojans, too. There is no one that they fear more or hate more. They will kill him if they can tomorrow, and all who are dear to him. You must be careful. He will protect me. I know he will, she says, as long as he lives. But even Achilles may not be able to fight Hector and Sarpedon both. She hesitates again. If the camp falls, I will claim you as my husband. It may help some. You must not speak of what you were to him, though. It will be a death sentence. Her hand has tightened on my arm. Promise me. Briseis, I say. If he is dead, I will not be far behind. She presses my hand to her cheek. Then promise me something else, she says. Promise me that whatever happens, you will not leave Troy without me. I know that you cannot. She breaks off. I would rather live as your sister than remain here. That is nothing that you have to bind me to, I say. I would not leave you if you wish to come. It grieved me beyond measure to think of the war ending tomorrow and never seeing you again. The smile is thick in her throat. I am glad. I do not say that I do not think I will ever leave Troy. I draw her to me, fill my arms with her. She lays her head upon my chest. For a moment, we do not think of Agamemnon and danger and dying Greeks. There is only her small hand on my stomach, and the softness of her cheek as I stroke it. It is strange how well she fits there, how easily I touch my lips to her hair, soft and smelling of lavender. She sighs a little, nestles closer. Almost, I can imagine that this is my life, held in the sweet circle of her arms. I would marry her, and we would have a child. Perhaps if I had never known Achilles. I should go, I say. She draws down the blanket, releasing me into the air. She cups my face in her hands. Be careful tomorrow, she says. Best of men, best of the Myrmidons. She places her fingers to my lips, stopping my objection. It is truth, she says. Let it stand for once. Then she leads me to the side of her tent, helps me slip beneath the canvas. The last thing I feel is her hand, squeezing mine in farewell. That night, I lie in bed beside Achilles. His face is innocent, sleep-smoothed and sweetly boyish. I love to see it. This is his truest self, earnest and guileless, full of mischief but without malice. He is lost in Agamemnon and Odysseus's wily double meanings, their lies and games of power. They have confounded him, tied him to a stake and baited him. I stroke the soft skin of his forehead. I would untie him if I could, if he would let me. Chapter 29. We wake to shouts and thunder, a storm that has burst from the blue of the sky. There is no rain, only the grey air, crackling and dry, and jagged streaks that strike like the clap of giant hands. We hurry to the tent door to look out. Smoke, acrid and dark, is drifting up the beach towards us, carrying the smell of lightning-detonated earth. The attack has begun, and Zeus is keeping his bargain, punctuating the Trojans' advance with celestial encouragement. We feel a pounding, deep in the ground, a charge of chariots perhaps, led by the huge Sarpedon. Achilles' hand grips mine, his face stilled. This is the first time in 10 years that the Trojans have ever threatened the gate, have ever pushed so far across the plain. If they break through the wall, they will burn the ships, our only way of getting home, the only thing that makes us an army instead of refugees. This is the moment that Achilles and his mother have summoned. The Greeks, routed and desperate without him. The sudden, incontrovertible proof of his worth. But when will it be enough? When will he intervene? Never, he says when I ask him. Never, until Agamemnon begs my forgiveness or Hector himself walks into my camp and threatens what is dear to me. I have sworn I will not. What if Agamemnon is dead? Bring me his body, and I will fight. His face is carved and unmovable, like the statue of a stern god. Do you not fear that the men will hate you? They should hate Agamemnon. It is his pride that kills them. And yours. But I know the look on his face, the dark recklessness of his eyes. He will not yield. He does not know how. I have lived 18 years with him, and he has never backed down, never lost. What will happen if he is forced to? I am afraid for him, and for me, and for all of us. We dress and eat, and Achilles speaks bravely of the future. He talks of tomorrow, when perhaps we will swim or scramble up the bare trunks of sticky cypresses, or watch for the hatching of the sea turtle eggs, even now incubating beneath the sun-warmed sand. But my mind keeps slipping from his words, dragged downwards by the seeping grey of the sky, by the sand chilled and pallid as a corpse, and the distant dying shrieks of men whom I know. How many more by day's end? I watch him staring over the ocean. It is unnaturally still, as if Thetis is holding her breath. His eyes are dark and dilated by the dim overcast of morning. The flame of his hair licks against his forehead.
"Who is that?"
he asks suddenly. Down the beach, a distant figure is being carried on a stretcher to the white tent. Someone important. There is a crowd around him. I seize on the excuse for motion, distraction. I will go see. Outside the remove of our camp, the sounds of battle grow louder. Piercing screams of horses impaled on the stakes of the trench, the desperate shouts of the commanders, the clangor of metal on metal. Podalerius shoulders past me into the white tent. The air is thick with the smell of herbs and blood, fear and sweat. Nestor looms up at me from my right, his hand clamping around my shoulder, chilling through my tunic. He screeches, "We are lost! The wall is breaking!" Behind him, Machaon lies panting on a pallet, his leg a spreading pool of blood from the ragged prick of an arrow. Podalerius is bent over him, already working. Machaon sees me. "Patroclus," he says, gasping a little. I go to him. "Will you be all right?" "Cannot tell yet. I think—" He breaks off, his eyes squeezed shut. "Do not talk to him," Podalerius says sharply. His hands are covered in his brother's blood. Nestor's voice rushes onward, listing woe after woe, the wall splintering and the ships in danger, and so many wounded kings, Diomedes, Agamemnon, Odysseus, strewn about the camp like crumpled tunics. Machaon's eyes open. "Can you not speak to Achilles?" he says hoarsely. "Please, for all of us." "Yes, Thyre must come to our aid, or we are lost." Nestor's fingers dig into my flesh, and my face is damp with the panicked spray of his lips. My eyes close. I am remembering Phoenix's story, the image of the Caledonians kneeling before Cleopatra, covering her hands and feet with their tears. In my imagination, she does not look at them, only lends them her hands as if perhaps they were cloths to wipe their streaming eyes. She is watching her husband Meleager for his answer, the set of his mouth that tells her what she must say. No. I yank myself from the old man's clinging fingers. I am desperate to escape the sour smell of fear that has settled like ash over everything. I turn from Machaon's pain-twisted face and the old man's outstretched hands and flee from the tent. As I step outside, there is a terrible cracking, like a ship's hull tearing apart, like a giant tree smashing to earth. The wall. Screams follow, of triumph and terror. All around me are men carrying fallen comrades, limping on makeshift crutches or crawling through the sand, dragging broken limbs behind them. I know them, their torsos full of scars my ointments have packed and sealed, their flesh that my fingers have cleaned of iron and bronze and blood, their faces that have joked, thanked, grimaced as I worked over them. Now these men are ruined again, pulpy with blood and split bone. Because of him. Because of me. Ahead of me, a young man struggles to stand on an arrow-pierced leg. Eurypylus, Prince of Thessaly. I do not stop to think. I wind my arm under his shoulder and carry him to his tent. He is half delirious with pain, but he knows me. "Patroclus," he manages. I kneel before him, his leg in my hands. "Eurypylus," I say, "can you speak?" "Fucking Paris," he says. "My leg!" The flesh is swollen and torn. I seize my dagger and begin to work. He grits his teeth. "I don't know who I hate more, the Trojans or Achilles. Sarpedon tore the wall apart with his bare hands. Ajax held them off as long as he could. They're here now," he says, panting. "In the camp." My chest clutches in panic at his words, and I fight the urge to bolt. I try to focus on what is before me, easing the arrow point from his leg, binding the wound. "Hurry," he says, the words slurring. "I have to go back. They'll burn the ships." "You cannot go out again," I say. "You have lost too much blood." "No," he says, but his head slumps backwards. He is on the edge of unconsciousness. He will live, or not, by the will of the gods. I have done all I can. I take a breath and step outside. 2 ships are on fire, the long fingers of their masts lit by Trojan torches. Pressed against the hulls is a crush of men screaming, desperate, leaping to the decks to beat at the flames. The only one I can recognize is Ajax, legs widespread on Agamemnon's prow, a massive shadow outlined against the sky. He ignores the fire, his spear stabbing downwards at the Trojan hands that swarm like feeding fish. As I stand there, frozen and staring, I see a sudden hand reaching above the melee to grip the sharp nose of a ship, and then the arm beneath it, sure and strong and dark, and the head, and the wide-shouldered torso breaks to air like dolphin back from the boiling men beneath. And now Hector's whole brown body twists alone before the blankness of sea and sky, hung between air and earth. His face is smoothed, at peace, his eyes lifted, a man in prayer, a man seeking God. He hangs there a moment, the muscles in his arm knotted and flexed, his armour lifting on his shoulders, showing hip bones like the carved cornice of a temple. Then his other hand swings a bright torch towards the ship's wooden deck. It is well thrown, landing amid old rotting ropes and fallen sail. The flames catch immediately, skittering along the rope, then kindling the wood beneath. Hector smiles, and why should he not? He is winning. Ajax screams in frustration, at another ship in flames, at the men that leap in panic from the charring decks, at Hector slithering out of reach, vanishing back into the crowd below. His strength is all that keeps the men from utterly breaking. And then a spear point flashes up from beneath, silver as fish scale in sunlight. It flickers, almost too fast to see, and suddenly Ajax's thigh blooms bright red. I have worked long enough in Machaon's tent to know that it has sliced through muscle. His knees waver a moment, buckling slowly. He falls. Chapter 30. Achilles watched me approach, running so hard my breaths carried the taste of blood onto my tongue. I wept, my chest shaking, my throat rubbed raw. He would be hated now. No one would remember his glory, or his honesty, or his beauty. All his gold would be turned to ashes and ruin. "What has happened?" he asked. His brow was drawn deep in concern. Did he truly not know? "They are dying," I choked out. "All of them. The Trojans are in the camp. They are burning the ships. Ajax is wounded. There is no one left but you to save them." His face had gone cold as I spoke. "If they are dying, it is Agamemnon's fault. I told him what would happen if he took my honor. Last night he offered—" He made a noise in his throat. "He offered nothing. Some tripods, some armor. Nothing to make right his insult, or to admit his wrong. I have saved him time and again, his army, his life." His voice was thick with barely restrained anger. "Odysseus may lick his boots, and Diomedes and all the rest, but I will not." "He is a disgrace." I clutched at him like a child. "I know it, and all the men know it too. You must forget him. It is as you said, he will doom himself, but do not blame them for his fault. Do not let them die because of his madness. They have loved you and honored you." "Honored me? Not one of them stood with me against Agamemnon. Not one of them spoke for me." The bitterness in his tone shocked me. "They stood by and let him insult me as if he were right. I toiled for them for 10 years, and their repayment is to discard me." His eyes had gone dark and distant. "They have made their choice. I shed no tears for them." From down the beach the crack of a mast falling. The smoke was thicker now, more ships on fire, more men dead. They would be cursing him, damning him to the darkest chains of our underworld. "They were foolish, yes, but they are still our people." "The Myrmidons are our people. The rest can save themselves." He would have walked away, but I held him to me. "You are destroying yourself. You will not be loved for this. You will be hated and cursed. Please, if you—" "Patroclus!" The word was sharp, as he had never spoken it. His eyes bore down on me, his voice like the judge's sentence. "I will not do this. Do not ask again." I stared at him, straight as a spear stabbing the sky. I could not find the words that would reach him. Perhaps there were none. The grey sand, the grey sky, and my mouth parched and bare. It felt like the end of all things. He would not fight. The men would die, and his honour with it. No mitigation, no mercy. Yet still my mind scrabbled in its corners, desperate, hoping to find the thing that might soften him. I knelt and pressed his hands to my face. My cheeks flowed with tears unending like water over dark rock. "For me, then," I said. "Save them for me. I know what I am asking of you, but I ask it for me." He looked down at me, and I saw the pull my words had on him, the struggle in his eyes. He swallowed. "Anything else?" he said. "Anything. But not this. I cannot." I looked at the stone of his beautiful face and despaired. "If you love me—" "No." His face was stiff with tension. "I cannot. If I yield, Agamemnon can dishonour me whenever he wishes. The kings will not respect me, nor the men." He was breathless, as though he had run far. "Do you think I wish them all to die? But I cannot. I cannot. I will not let him take this from me." "Then do something else. Send the Myrmidons at least. Send me in your place. Put me in your armour, and I will lead the Myrmidons. They will think it is you." The words shocked us both. They seemed to come through me, not from me, as though spoken straight from a god's mouth, yet I seized on them as a drowning man. "Do you see? You will not have to break your oath, yet the Greeks will be saved." He stared at me. "But you cannot fight," he said. "I will not have to. They are so frightened of you. If I show myself, they will run." "No," he said. "It is too dangerous." "Please." I gripped him. "It isn't. I will be all right. I won't go near them. Automedon will be with me, and the rest of the Myrmidons. If you cannot fight, you cannot, but save them this way. Let me do this. You said you would grant me anything else." But I did not let him answer. "Think. Agamemnon will know you defy him still, but the men will love you. There is no fame greater than this. You will prove to them all that your phantom is more powerful than Agamemnon's whole army." He was listening. "It will be your mighty name that saves them, not your spear arm. They will laugh at Agamemnon's weakness then. Do you see?" I watched his eyes, saw the reluctance giving way inch by inch. He was imagining it, the Trojans fleeing from his armour, outflanking Agamemnon, the men falling at his feet in gratitude. He held up his hand. "Swear to me," he said. "Swear to me that if you go, you will not fight them. You will stay with Automedon in the chariot and let the Myrmidons go in front of you." "Yes," I pressed my hand to his. "Of course, I am not mad. To frighten them, that is all." I was drenched and giddy. I had found a way through the endless corridors of his pride and fury. I would save the men. I would save him from himself. "You will let me?" He hesitated another moment, his green eyes searching mine. Then, slowly, he nodded. Achilles knelt, buckling me in, his fingers so swift that I could not follow them, only feel the quick, pulling cinches of tightening belts. Bit by bit, he assembled me, the bronze breastplate and greaves, tight against my skin, the leather underskirt. As he worked, he instructed me in a voice that was low and quick and constant. I must not fight. I must not leave Automedon, nor the other Myrmidons. I was to stay in the chariot and flee at the first sign of danger. I could chase the Trojans back to Troy, but not try to fight them there. And most of all, I must stay away from the walls of the city and the archers that perched there, ready to pick off Greeks who came too close. "It will not be like before," he said, "when I am there." I know. I shifted my shoulders. The armor was stiff and heavy and unyielding. I feel like Daphne, I told him, barked up in her new laurel skin. He did not laugh, only handed me 2 spears, points polished and gleaming. I took them, the blood beginning to rush in my ears. He was speaking again, more advice, but I did not hear it. I was listening to the drumbeat of my own impatient heart. Hurry, I remember saying. Last, the helmet to cover my dark hair. He turned a polished bronze mirror towards me. I stared at myself in armor I knew as well as my own hands. The crest on the helmet, the silvered sword hanging from the waist, the baldric of hammered gold. All of it unmistakable and instantly recognizable. Only my eyes felt like my own, larger and darker than his. He kissed me, catching me up in a soft, opened warmth that breathed sweetness into my throat. Then he took my hand and we went outside to the myrmidons. They were lined up, armored and suddenly fearsome, their layers of metal flashing like the bright wings of cicadas. Achilles led me to the chariot already yoked to its 3-horse team. Don't leave the chariot. Don't throw your spears, and I understood that he was afraid that I would give myself away if I actually fought. I will be all right, I told him, and turned my back to fit myself into the chariot, to settle my spears and set my feet. Behind me, he spoke a moment to the myrmidons, waving a hand over his shoulder at the smoking decks of ships, the black ash that swarmed upwards to the sky, and the roiling mass of bodies that tussled at their hulls. Bring him back to me, he told them. They nodded and clattered their spears on their shields in approval. Automedon stepped in front of me, taking the reins. We all knew why the chariot was necessary. If I ran down the beach, my steps would never be mistaken for his. The horses snorted and blew, feeling their charioteer behind them. The wheels gave a little lurch and I staggered, my spears rattling. Balance them, he told me. It will be easier. Everyone waited as I awkwardly transferred one spear to my left hand, swiping my helmet askew as I did so. I reached up to fix it. I will be fine, I told him. Myself. Are you ready? Automedon asked. I took a last look at Achilles, standing by the side of the chariot, almost forlorn. I reached for his hand, and he gripped it. Be careful, he said. I will. There was more to say, but for once we did not say it. There would be other times for speaking, tonight and tomorrow, and all the days after that. He let go of my hand. I turned back to Automedon. I'm ready, I told him. The chariot began to roll, Automedon guiding it towards the packed sand nearer the surf. I felt, when we reached it, the wheels catching, the car smoothing out. We turned towards the ships, picking up speed. I felt the wind snatch at my crest, and I knew that the horsehair was streaming behind me. I lifted my spears. Automedon crouched down low so that I would be seen first. Sand flew from our churning wheels and the myrmidons clattered behind us. My breaths had begun to come in gasps, and I gripped the spear shafts till my fingers hurt. We flew past the empty tents of Idomeneus and Diomedes around the beach's curve, and finally the first clumps of men. Their faces blurred by, but I heard their shouts of recognition and sudden joy. Achilles! It is Achilles! I felt a fierce and flooding relief. It is working. Now, 200 paces away, rushing towards me were the ships and the armies, heads turning at the noise of our wheels and the myrmidon feet beating in unison against the sand. I took a breath and squared my shoulders inside the grip of his armor. And then, head tilted back, spear raised, feet braced against the sides of the chariot, praying that we would not hit a bump that would throw me, I screamed, a wild, frenzied sound that shook my whole body. 1,000 faces, Trojan and Greek, turned to me in frozen shock and joy. With a crash, we were among them. I screamed again, his name boiling up out of my throat, and heard an answering cry from the embattled Greeks, an animal howl of hope. The Trojans began to break apart before me, scrambling backwards with gratifying terror. I bared my teeth in triumph, blood flooding my veins, the fierceness of my pleasure as I saw them run. But the Trojans were brave men, and not all of them ran. My hand lifted, hefting my spear in threat. Perhaps it was the armor moulding me, perhaps it was the years of watching him, but the position my shoulder found was not the old wobbling awkwardness. It was higher, stronger, a perfect balance. And then, before I could think about what I did, I threw a long, straight spiral into the breast of a Trojan. The torch that he had been waving at Idomeneus' ship slipped and guttered in the sand as his body pitched backwards. If he bled, if his skull split to show his brain, I did not see it. Dead, I thought. Automedon's mouth was moving, his eyes wide. Achilles does not want you to fight, I guessed he was saying, but already my other spear hefted itself into my hand. I can do this. The horses veered again, and men scattered from our path. That feeling again of pure balance, of the world poised and waiting. My eye caught on a Trojan, and I threw, feeling the swipe of wood against my thumb. He fell, pierced through the thigh in a blow I knew had shattered bone. 2. All around me men screamed Achilles' name. I gripped Automedon's shoulder. Another spear! He hesitated a moment, then pulled on the reins, slowing so I could lean over the side of the rattling chariot to claim one stuck in a body. The shaft seemed to leap into my hand. My eyes were already searching for the next face. The Greeks began to rally, Menelaus killing a man beside me, one of Nestor's sons banging his spear against my chariot as if for luck before he threw at a Trojan prince's head. Desperately, the Trojans scrambled for their chariots in full retreat. Hector ran among them, crying out for order. He gained his chariot, began to lead the men to the gate, and then over the narrow causeway that bridged the trench and onto the plain beyond. "Go! Follow them!" Automedon's face was full of reluctance, but he obeyed, turning the horses in pursuit. I grabbed more spears from bodies, half dragging a few corpses behind me before I could jerk the points free, and chased the Trojan chariots now choking the door. I saw their drivers looking back fearfully, frantically, at Achilles reborn phoenix-like from his sulking rage. Not all the horses were as nimble as Hector's, and many panicked chariots skidded off the causeway to founder in the trench, leaving their drivers to flee on foot. We followed, Achilles' godlike horses racing with their legs outflung into the palm of the air. I might have stopped then, with the Trojans scattering back to their city, but there was a line of rallied Greeks behind me screaming my name, his name. I did not stop. I pointed, and Automedon swept the horses out in an arc, lashing them onward. We passed the fleeing Trojans and curved around to meet them as they ran. My spears aimed and aimed again, splitting open bellies and throats, lungs and hearts. I am relentless, unerring, skirting buckles and bronze to tear flesh that spills red like the jagged puncture of a wineskin. From my days in the white tent, I know every frailty they have. It is so easy. From the roiling melee bursts a chariot. The driver is huge, his long hair flying behind as he lashes his horses to foam and froth. His dark eyes are fixed on me, his mouth twisted in rage. His armor fits him like the skin fits the seal. It is Sarpedon. His arm lifts to aim his spear at my heart. Automedon screams something, yanks at the reins. There is a breath of wind over my shoulder. The spear's sharp point buries itself in the ground behind me. Sarpedon shouts, curse or challenge I do not know. I heft my spear as if in a dream. This is the man who has killed so many Greeks. It was his hands that tore open the gate. No! Automedon catches at my arm. With his other hand he lashes the horses, and we tear up the field. Sarpedon turns his chariot, angling it away, and for a moment I think he has given up. Then he angles in again and lifts his spear. The world explodes. The chariot bucks into the air, and the horses scream. I am thrown onto the grass, and my head smacks the ground. My helmet falls forward into my eyes, and I shove it back. I see our horses tangled in each other. One has fallen, pierced with a spear. I do not see Automedon. From afar Sarpedon comes, his chariot driving relentlessly towards me. There is no time to flee. I stand to meet him. I lift my spear, gripping it as though it is a snake I will strangle. I imagine how Achilles would do it, feet planted to earth, back muscles twisting. He would see a gap in that impenetrable armor, or he would make one. But I am not Achilles. What I see is something else, my only chance. They are almost upon me. I cast the spear. It hits his belly, where the armor plate is thick, but the ground is uneven, and I have thrown it with all of my strength. It does not pierce him, but it knocks him back a single step. It is enough. His weight tilts the chariot, and he stumbles from it. The horses plunge past me and leave him behind, motionless on the ground. I clutch my sword hilt, terrified that he will rise and kill me. Then I see the unnatural, broken angle of his neck. I have killed a son of Zeus, but it is not enough. They must think it is Achilles who has done it. The dust has already settled on Sarpedon's long hair, like pollen on the underside of a bee. I retrieve my spear and stab it down with all my strength into his chest. The blood spurts, but weakly. There is no heartbeat to push it forward. When I pull the spear out, it dislodges slowly, like a bulb from cracking earth. That is what they will think has killed him. I hear the shouts, men swarming towards me, in chariots and on foot. Lycians who see the blood of their king on my spear. Automedon's hand seizes my shoulder, and he drags me onto the chariot. He has cut the dead horse free, righted the wheels. He is gasping, white with fear. "We must go!" Automedon gives the eager horses their head, and we race across the field from the pursuing Lycians. There is a wild, iron taste in my mouth. I do not even notice how close I have come to death. My head buzzes with a red savagery, blooming like the blood from Sarpedon's chest. In our escape, Automedon has driven us close to Troy. The walls loom up at me, huge cut stones, supposedly settled by the hands of gods, and the gates, giant and black with old bronze. Achilles had warned me to beware of archers on the towers, but the charge and rout has happened so quickly, no one has returned yet. Troy is utterly unguarded. A child could take it now. The thought of Troy's fall pierces me with vicious pleasure. They deserve to lose their city. It is their fault, all of it. We have lost 10 years and so many men, and Achilles will die because of them. No more. I leap from the chariot and run to the walls. My fingers find slight hollows in the stone, like blind eye sockets. Climb. My feet seek infinitesimal chips in the god-cut rocks. I am not graceful, but scrabbling, my hands clawing against the stone before they cling, yet I am climbing. I will crack their uncrackable city and capture Helen, the precious gold yoke within. I imagine dragging her out under my arm, dumping her before Menelaus. Done. No more men will have to die for her vanity. Patroclus. A voice like music above me. I look up to see a man leaning on the walls as if sunning, dark hair to his shoulders, a quiver and bow slung casually around his torso. Startled, I slip a little, my knees scraping the rock. He is piercingly beautiful, smooth skin and a finely cut face that glows with something more than human. Black eyes. Apollo. He smiles, as if this was all he had wanted, my recognition. Then he reaches down, his arm impossibly spanning the long distance between my clinging form and his feet. I close my eyes and feel only this, a finger hooking the back of my armor, plucking me off and dropping me below. I land heavily, my armor clattering. My mind blurs a little from the impact, from the frustration of finding the ground so suddenly beneath me. I thought I was climbing, but there is the wall before me, stubbornly unclimbed. I set my jaw and begin again. I will not let it defeat me. I am delirious, fevered with my dream of Helen captive in my arms. The stones are like dark waters that flow ceaselessly over something I have dropped, that I want back. I forget about the god, why I have fallen, why my feet stick in the same crevices I have already climbed. Perhaps this is all I do, I think, demented. Climb walls and fall from them. And this time when I look up, the god is not smiling. Fingers scoop the fabric of my tunic and hold me, dangling. Then let me fall. My head cracks the ground again, leaving me stunned and breathless. Around me, a blurring crowd of faces gathers. Have they come to help me? And then I feel the prickling chill of air against my sweat-dampened forehead, the loosening of my dark hair freed at last. My helmet. I see it beside me, overturned like an empty snail shell. My armor, too, has been shaken loose, all those straps that Achilles had tied, undone by the god. It falls from me, scattering the earth, the remnants of my split shell. The frozen silence is broken by the hoarse, angry screams of Trojans. My mind startles to life. I am unarmed and alone, and they know I am only Patroclus. Run! I lunge to my feet. A spear flashes out, just a breath too slow. It grazes the skin of my calf, marks it with a line of red. I twist away from a reaching hand, panic loose and banging in my chest. Through the haze of terror, I see a man leveling a spear at my face. Somehow, I am quick enough and it passes over me, ruffling my hair like a lover's breath. A spear stabs towards my knees, meant to trip me. I leap it, shocked I am not dead already. I have never been so fast in all my life. The spear that I do not see comes from behind. It pierces the skin of my back, breaks again to air beneath my ribs. I stumble, driven forward by the blow's force, by the shock of tearing pain and the burning numbness in my belly. I feel a tug, and the spear point is gone. The blood gushes hot on my chilled skin. I think I scream. The Trojan faces waver, and I fall. My blood runs through my fingers and onto the grass. The crowd parts, and I see a man walking towards me. He seems to come from a great distance, to descend somehow, as if I lay in the bottom of a deep ravine. I know him. Hip bones like the cornice of a temple, his brow furrowed and stern. He does not look at the men who surround him. He walks as if he were alone on the battlefield. He is coming to kill me. Hector. My breaths are shallow gasps that feel like new wounds tearing. Remembrance drums in me, like the pulse beat of blood in my ears. He cannot kill me. He must not. Achilles will not let him live if he does. And Hector must live, always. He must never die. Not even when he is old, not even when he is so withered that his bones slide beneath his skin like loose rocks in a stream. He must live, because his life, I think, as I scrape backwards over the grass, is the final dam before Achilles' own blood will flow. Desperately, I turn to the men around me and scrabble at their knees. Please, I croak, please. But they will not look. They are watching their prince, Priam's eldest son, and his inexorable steps towards me. My head jerks back, and I see that he is close now, his spear raised. The only sound I hear is my own heaving lungs, air pumped into my chest and pushed from it. Hector's spear lifts over me, tipping like a pitcher, and then it falls, a spill of bright silver towards me. No. My hands flurry in the air like startled birds trying to halt the spear's relentless movement towards my belly, but I am weak as a baby against Hector's strength, and my palms give way, unspooling in ribbons of red. The spearhead submerges in a sear of pain so great that my breath stops, a boil of agony that bursts over my whole stomach. My head drops back against the ground, and the last image I see is of Hector, leaning seriously over me, twisting his spear inside me as if he is stirring a pot. The last thing I think is Achilles. Chapter 31. Achilles stands on the ridge watching the dark shapes of battle moving across the field of Troy. He cannot make out faces or individual forms. The charge towards Troy looks like the tide coming in. The glint of swords and armour is fish-scale beneath the sun. The Greeks are routing the Trojans, as Patroclus had said. Soon he will return, and Agamemnon will kneel. They will be happy again. But he cannot feel it. There is a numbness in him. The writhing field is like a Gorgon's face, turning him slowly to stone. The snakes twist and twist before him, gathering into a dark knot at the base of Troy. A king has fallen, or a prince, and they are fighting for the body. Who? He shields his eyes, but no more is revealed. Patroclus will be able to tell him. He sees the thing in pieces. Men coming down the beach towards the camp. Odysseus limping beside the other kings. Menelaus has something in his arms. A grass-stained foot hangs loose. Locks of tousled hair have slipped from the makeshift shroud. The numbness now is merciful. A last few moments of it. Then, the fall. He snatches for his sword to slash his throat. It is only when his hand comes up empty that he remembers. He gave the sword to me. Then Antilochus is seizing his wrists, and the men are all talking. All he can see is the blood-stained cloth. With a roar he throws Antilochus from him, knocks down Menelaus. He falls on the body. The knowledge rushes up in him, choking off breath. A scream comes, tearing its way out. Then another, and another. He seizes his hair in his hands and yanks it from his head. Golden strands fall onto the bloody corpse. Patroclus, he says. Patroclus. Patroclus. Over and over until it is sound only. Somewhere, Odysseus is kneeling, urging food and drink. A fierce red rage comes, and he almost kills him there. But he would have to let go of me. He cannot. He holds me so tightly, I can feel the faint beat of his chest, like the wings of a moth. An echo, the last bit of spirit still tethered to my body. A torment. Briseis runs towards us, face contorted. She bends over the body, her lovely dark eyes spilling water warm as summer rain. She covers her face with her hands and wails. Achilles does not look at her. He does not even see her. He stands.
Who did this?
His voice is a terrible thing, cracked and broken.
Hector,
Menelaus says. Achilles seizes his giant ash spear and tries to tear free from the arms that hold him. Odysseus grabs his shoulders. Tomorrow, he says. He has gone inside the city. Tomorrow. Listen to me, Pelides. Tomorrow you can kill him. I swear it. Now you must eat and rest. Achilles weeps. He cradles me, and will not eat, nor speak a word other than my name. I see his face as if through water, as a fish sees the sun. His tears fall, but I cannot wipe them away. This is my element now, the half-life of the unburied spirit. His mother comes. I hear her, the sound of waves breaking on shore. If I disgusted her when I was alive, it is worse to find my corpse in her son's arms.
He is dead,
she says in her flat voice.
Hector is dead,
he says. Tomorrow.
You have no armor.
I do not need any. His teeth show. It is an effort to speak. She reaches, pale and cool, to take his hands from me.
"He did it to himself,"
she says.
"Do not touch me."
She draws back, watching him cradle me in his arms.
"I will bring you armor,"
she says. It goes like this, on and on, the tent flap opening, the tentative face, Phoenix, or Automedon, or Machaon. At last Odysseus. Agamemnon has come to see you, and return the girl. Achilles does not say, she has already returned. Perhaps he does not know. The two men face each other in the flickering firelight. Agamemnon clears his throat.
"It is time to forget the division between us. I come to bring you the girl, Achilles, unharmed and well."
He pauses, as if expecting a rush of gratitude. There is only silence.
"Truly, a god must have snatched our wits from us to set us so at odds. But that is over now, and we are allies once more."
This last is said loudly for the benefit of the watching men. Achilles does not respond. He is imagining killing Hector. It is all that keeps him standing. Agamemnon hesitates.
"Prince Achilles, I hear you will fight tomorrow."
"Yes." The suddenness of his answer startles them.
"Very good. That is very good."
Agamemnon waits another moment.
"And you will fight after that, also?"
"If you wish," Achilles answers. "I do not care. I will be dead soon." The watching men exchange glances. Agamemnon recovers.
"Well, we are settled then."
He turns to go, stops.
"I was sorry to hear of Patroclus's death. He fought bravely today. Did you hear he killed Sarpedon?"
Achilles' eyes lift. They are bloodshot and dead.
"I wish he had let you all die."
Agamemnon is too shocked to answer. Odysseus steps into the silence.
"We will leave you to mourn, Prince Achilles."
Briseis is kneeling by my body. She has brought water and cloth and washes the blood and dirt from my skin. Her hands are gentle, as though she washes a baby, not a dead thing. Achilles opens the tent, and their eyes meet over my body.
"Get away from him,"
he says.
"I am almost finished. He does not deserve to lie in filth."
"I would not have your hands on him." Her eyes are sharp with tears.
"Do you think you are the only one who loved him?"
"Get out! Get out!"
"You care more for him in death than in life."
Her voice is bitter with grief.
"How could you have let him go? You knew he could not fight."
Achilles screams and shatters a serving bowl. "Get out!" Briseis does not flinch.
"Kill me. It will not bring him back. He was worth 10 of you. 10. And you sent him to his death."
The sound that comes from him is hardly human.
"I tried to stop him. I told him not to leave the beach." "You are the one who made him go."
Briseis steps towards him.
"He fought to save you and your darling reputation, because he could not bear to see you suffer."
Achilles buries his face in his hands, but she does not relent.
"You have never deserved him. I do not know why he ever loved you. You care only for yourself."
Achilles' gaze lifts to meet hers. She is afraid, but does not draw back.
"I hope that Hector kills you."
The breath rasps in his throat.
"Do you think I do not hope the same?" he asks.
He weeps as he lifts me onto our bed. My corpse sags. It is warm in the tent, and the smell will come soon. He does not seem to care. He holds me all night long, pressing my cold hands to his mouth. At dawn, his mother returns with a shield and sword and breastplate, newly minted from still warm bronze. She watches him arm, and does not try to speak to him. He does not wait for the Myrmidons or Automedon. He runs up the beach, past the Greeks who have come out to sea. They grab their arms and follow. They do not want to miss it. "Hector!" he screams. "Hector!" He tears through the advancing Trojan ranks, shattering chests and faces, marking them with the meteor of his fury. He is gone before their bodies hit the ground. The grass, thinned from 10 years of warfare, drinks the rich blood of princes and kings. Yet Hector eludes him. Weaving through the chariots and men with the luck of the gods, no one calls it cowardice that he runs. He will not live if he is caught. He is wearing Achilles' own armor, the unmistakable phoenix breastplate taken from beside my corpse. The men stare as the two pass. It looks, almost, as if Achilles is chasing himself. Chest heaving, Hector races towards Troy's wide river, the Scamander. Its water glints a creamy gold, dyed by the stones in its riverbed, the yellow rock for which Troy is known. The waters are not golden now, but a muddied, churning red choked with corpses and armor. Hector lunges into the waves and swims, arms cutting through the helmets and rolling bodies. He gains the other shore. Achilles leaps to follow. A figure rises from the river to bar his way. Filthy water sluices off the muscles of his shoulders, pours from his black beard. He is taller than the tallest mortal, and swollen with strength like creeks in spring. He loves Troy and its people. In summer they pour wine for him as a sacrifice, and drop garlands to float upon his waters. Most pious of all is Hector, Prince of Troy. Achilles' face is spattered with blood. "You will not keep me from him." The river god Scamander lifts a thick staff, large as a small tree trunk. He does not need a blade. One strike with this would break bones, snap a neck. Achilles has only a sword. His spears are gone, buried in bodies. "Is it worth your life?" the god says. "No, please." But I have no voice to speak. Achilles steps into the river and lifts his sword. With hands as large as a man's torso, the river god swings his staff. Achilles ducks and then rolls forward over the returning whistle of a second swing. He gains his feet and strikes, whipping towards the god's unprotected chest. Easily, almost casually, the god twists away. The sword's point passes harmlessly, as it has never done before. The god attacks. His swings force Achilles backwards over the debris lining the river. He uses his staff like a hammer. Wide arcs of spray leap from where it smashes against the river's surface. Achilles must spring away each time. The waters do not seem to drag at him as they might at another man. Achilles' sword flashes faster than thought, but he cannot touch the god. Scamander catches every blow with his mighty staff, forcing him to be faster and then faster still. The god is old as the first melting of ice from the mountains, and he is wily. He has known every fight that was ever fought on these plains, and there is nothing new to him. Achilles begins to slow, worn out from the strain of holding back the god's strength with only a thin edge of metal. Chips of wood fly as the weapons meet, but the staff is thick as one of Scamander's legs. There is no hope that it will break. The god has begun to smile at how often now the man seeks to duck rather than meet his blows. Inexorably, he bears down. Achilles' face is contorted with effort and focus. He is fighting at the edge, the very edge of his power. He is not, after all, a god. I see him gathering himself, preparing one final desperate attack. He begins the pass, sword blurring towards the god's head. For a fraction of a second, Scamander must lean back to avoid it. That is the moment Achilles needs. I see his muscles tense for that last single thrust. He leaps. For the first time in all his life, he is not fast enough. The god catches the blow, and throws it violently aside. Achilles stumbles. It is so slight, just the smallest lurch off balance, that I almost do not see it. But the god does. He lunges forward, vicious and victorious in the pause, the small hitch of time that the stumble has made. The wood swings down in a killing arc. He should have known better. I should have known. Those feet never stumbled, not once in all the time I knew them. If a mistake had come, it would not be there, from the delicate bones and curving arches. Achilles has baited his hook with human failure, and the god has leapt for it. As Scamander lunges, there is the opening, and Achilles' sword streaks towards it. A gash flowers in the god's side, and the river runs gold once more, stained with the ichor that spills from its master. Scamander will not die, but he must limp away now, weakened and weary, to the mountains and the source of his waters, to stanch the wound and regain his strength. He sinks into his river and is gone. Achilles' face is sweat-streaked, his breaths harsh, but he does not pause. "Hector!" he screams, and the hunt begins again. Somewhere the gods whisper, "He has beaten one of us." What will happen if he attacks the city? Troy is not meant to fall yet. And I think, do not fear for Troy. It is only Hector that he wants, Hector and Hector alone. When Hector is dead, he will stop. There is a grove at the base of Troy's high walls, home to a sacred twisting laurel. It is there that Hector at last stops running. Beneath its branches, the two men face each other. One of them is dark, his feet like roots driving deep into soil. He wears a golden breastplate and helmet, burnished greaves. It fit me well enough, but he is bigger than I, broader. At his throat, the metal gapes away from his skin. The other man's face is twisted almost beyond recognition. His clothes are still damp from his fight in the river. He lifts his ashen spear. "No," I beg him. It is his own death he holds, his own blood that will spill. He does not hear me. Hector's eyes are wide, but he will run no longer. He says, "Grant me this. Give my body to my family when you have killed me." Achilles makes a sound like choking. "There are no bargains between lions and men. I will kill you and eat you raw." His spear point flies in a dark whirlwind, bright as the evening star, to catch the hollow at Hector's throat. Achilles returns to the tent where my body waits. He is red and rust-red up to his elbows, his knees, his neck, as if he has swum in the vast dark chambers of a heart, and emerged, just now still dripping. He is dragging Hector's body behind him, pierced through its heels with a leather thong. The neat beard is matted with dirt, the face black with bloody dust. He has been pulling it behind his chariot as the horses run. The kings of Greece are waiting for him. "You have triumphed today, Achilles," Agamemnon says. "Bathe and rest yourself, and then we shall feast in your honor." "I will have no feast." He pushes through them, dragging Hector after. "Okamoros," his mother calls him in her softest voice. Swift-fated. "Will you not eat?" "You know I will not." She touches her hand to his cheek, as if to wipe away blood. He flinches. "Stop," he says. Her face goes blank for a second, so quickly he does not see. When she speaks, her voice is hard. "It is time to return Hector's body to his family for burial. You have killed him and taken your vengeance. It is enough." "It will never be enough," he says. For the first time since my death, he falls into a fitful, trembling sleep. Achilles, I cannot bear to see you grieving. His limbs twitch and shudder. Give us both peace. Burn me and bury me. I will wait for you among the shades. I will. But already he is waking. Patroclus, wait, I am here. He shakes the body beside him. When I do not answer, he weeps again. He rises at dawn to drag Hector's body around the walls of the city for all of Troy to see. He does it again at midday, and again at evening. He does not see the Greeks begin to avert their eyes from him. He does not see the lips thinning in disapproval as he passes. How long can this go on? Thetis is waiting for him in the tent, tall and straight as a flame. What do you want? He drops Hector's body by the door. Her cheeks have spots of colour, like blood spilled on marble.
You must stop this. Apollo is angry. He seeks vengeance upon you.
Let him. He kneels, smooths back the hair on my forehead. I am wrapped in blankets to muffle the smell.
Achilles.
She strides to him, seizes his chin.
Listen to me. You go too far in this. I will not be able to protect you from him.
He jerks his head from her and bares his teeth. I do not need you to. Her skin is whiter than I have ever seen it.
Do not be a fool. It is only my power that...
What does it matter? He cuts her off, snarling. He is dead. Can your power bring him back?
No,
she says.
Nothing can.
He stands. Do you think I cannot see your rejoicing? I know how you hated him. You have always hated him. If you had not gone to Zeus, he would be alive.
He is immortal, she says, and mortals die.
I am immortal, he screams. What good is Godhead if it cannot do this? What good are you?
I know you are mortal, she says.
She places each cold word as a tile in a mosaic.
I know it better than anyone. I left you too long on Pelion. It has ruined you.
She gestures, a flick, at his torn clothing, his tear-stained face.
This is not my son.
His chest heaves. Then who is it, mother? Am I not famous enough? I killed Hector, and who else? Send them before me. I will kill them all. Her face twists.
You act like a child. At 12, Pyrrhus is more of a man than you.
Pyrrhus? The word is a gasp.
He will come, and Troy will fall. The city cannot be taken without him, the fates say.
Her face glows. Achilles stares. You would bring him here?
He is the next Aristosachian.
I am not dead yet.
You may as well be.
The words are a lash.
Do you know what I have borne to make you great? And now you would destroy it for this.
She points at my festering body, her face tight with disgust.
I am done. There is no more I can do to save you.
Her black eyes seem to contract like dying stars.
I am glad that he is dead,
she says. It is the last thing she will ever say to him. Chapter 32. In the deepest reaches of night, when even the wild dogs drowse and the owls are quiet, an old man comes to our tent. He is filthy, his clothing torn, his hair smeared with ashes and dirt. His robes are wet from swimming the river, yet his eyes when he speaks are clear. I have come for my son, he says. The king of Troy moves across the room to kneel at Achilles' feet. He bows his white head. Will you hear a father's prayer, mighty prince of Tyre, best of the Greeks? Achilles stares down at the man's shoulders as if in a trance. They are trembling with age, stooped with the burdens of grief. This man bore 50 sons and has lost all but a handful.
I will hear you, he says. The blessings of the gods upon your kindness,
Priam says. His hands are cool on Achilles' burning skin.
I have come far this night in hope.
A shudder, involuntary, passes through him, the night's chill and the wet clothes.
I am sorry to appear so meanly before you.
The words seem to wake Achilles a little.
Do not kneel, he says. Let me bring you food and drink.
He offers his hand and helps the old king to his feet. He gives him a dry cloak and the soft cushions that Phoenix likes best, and pours wine. Beside Priam's furrowed skin and slow steps, he seems suddenly very young.
Thank you for your hospitality,
Priam says. His accent is strong and he speaks slowly, but his Greek is good.
I have heard you are a noble man, and it is on your nobility that I throw myself. We are enemies, yet you have never been known as cruel. I beg you to return my son's body for burial, so his soul does not wander lost.
As he speaks, he is careful not to let himself look at the shadow face down in the corner. Achilles is staring into the cupped darkness of his hands.
You show courage to come here alone, he says.
How did you get into the camp?
I was guided by the grace of the gods.
Achilles looks up at him.
How did you know I would not kill you? I did not know,
says Priam. There is silence. The food and wine sit before them, but neither eats nor drinks. I can see Achilles' ribs through his tunic. Priam's eyes find the other body, mine, lying on the bed. He hesitates a moment.
That is, your friend?
Philtartos, Achilles says sharply, most beloved. Best of men, and slaughtered by your son.
I am sorry for your loss,
Priam says.
And sorry that it was my son who took him from you. Yet I beg you to have mercy. In grief, men must help each other, though they are enemies.
What if I will not? His words have gone stiff.
Then you will not.
There is silence a moment. I could kill you still, Achilles says.
Achilles. I know.
The king's voice is quiet, unafraid.
But it is worth my life, if there is a chance my son's soul may be at rest.
Achilles' eyes fill. He looks away so the old man will not see. Priam's voice is gentle.
It is right to seek peace for the dead. You and I both know there is no peace for those who live after.
No, Achilles whispers. Nothing moves in the tent. Time does not seem to pass. Then Achilles stands. It is close to dawn, and I do not want you to be in danger as you travel home. I will have my servants prepare your son's body. When they are gone, he slumps next to me, his face against my belly. My skin grows slippery under the steady fall of his tears. The next day, he carries me to the pyre. Briseis and the Myrmidons watch as he places me on the wood and strikes the flint. The flames surround me, and I feel myself slipping further from life, thinning to only the faintest shiver in the air. I yearn for the darkness and silence of the underworld where I can rest. He collects my ashes himself, though this is a woman's duty. He puts them in a golden urn, the finest in our camp, and turns to the watching Greeks. When I am dead, I charge you to mingle our ashes and bury us together. Hector and Sarpedon are dead, but other heroes come to take their place. Anatolia is rich with allies and those making common cause against invaders. First is Memnon, the son of rosy-fingered Dawn, king of Ethiopia. A large man, dark and crowned, striding forward with an army of soldiers as dark as he, a burnished black. He stands, grinning expectantly. He has come for one man, and one man alone. That man comes to meet him, armed with only a spear. His breastplate is carelessly buckled. His once bright hair hangs lank and unwashed. Memnon laughs. This will be easy. When he crumples, folded around a long ashen shaft, the smile is shaken from his face. Wearily, Achilles retrieves his spear. Next come the horsewomen, breasts exposed, their skin glistening like oiled wood. Their hair is bound back, their arms are full of spears and bristling arrows. Curved shields hang from their saddles, crescent-shaped, as if coined from the moon. At their front is a single figure, on a chestnut horse, hair loose, Anatolian eyes dark and curving and fierce, chips of stone that move restlessly over the army before her. Penthesilea. She wears a cape, and it is this that undoes her, that allows her to be pulled, limbs light and poised as a cat, from her horse. She tumbles with easy grace, and one of her hands flashes for the spear tied to her saddle. She crouches in the dirt, bracing it. A face looms over her, grim, darkened, dulled. It wears no armour at all anymore, exposing all its skin to points and punctures. It is turned now, in hope, in wistfulness towards her. She stabs, and Achilles' body dodges the deadly point. Impossibly lithe, endlessly agile. Always its muscles betray it, seeking life instead of the peace that spears bring. She thrusts again, and he leaps over the point, drawn up like a frog, body light and loose. He makes a sound of grief. He had hoped, because she has killed so many. Because from her horse she seemed so like him, so quick and graceful, so relentless. But she is not. A single thrust crushes her to the ground, leaves her chest torn up like a field beneath the plough. Her women scream in anger, in grief at his retreating, bowed shoulders. Last of all is a young boy, Troilus. They have kept him behind the walls as their security, the youngest son of Priam, the one they want to survive. It is his brother's death that has pulled him from the walls. He is brave and foolish and will not listen. I see him wrenching from the restraining hands of his older brothers and leaping into his chariot. He flies headlong, like a loosed greyhound seeking vengeance. The spear butt catches against his chest, just starting to widen with manhood. He falls, still holding the reins, and the frightened horses bolt, dragging him behind. His trailing spear tip clicks against the stones, writing in the dust with its bronze fingernail. At last he frees himself and stands, his legs, his back scraped and crusted. He faces the older man who looms in front of him, the shadow that haunts the battlefield, the grisly face that wearily kills man after man. I see that he does not stand a chance. His bright eyes, his bravely lifted chin. The point catches the soft bulb of his throat, and liquid spills like ink, its colour bled away by the dusk around me. The boy falls. Within the walls of Troy, a bow is strung quickly by rushing hands. An arrow is selected, and princely feet hurry upstairs to a tower that tilts over a battlefield of dead and dying, where a god is waiting. It is easy for Paris to find his target. The man moves slowly, like a lion grown wounded and sick, but his gold hair is unmistakable. Paris knocks his arrow. Where do I aim? I heard he was invulnerable, except for... He is a man, Apollo says, not a god. Shoot him, and he will die. Paris aims. The god touches his finger to the arrow's fletching. Then he breathes, a puff of air, as if to send dandelions flying, to push toy boats over water. And the arrow flies, straight and silent in a curving downward arc towards Achilles' back. Achilles hears the faint hum of its passage a second before it strikes. He turns his head a little, as if to watch it come. He closes his eyes and feels its point push through his skin, parting thick muscle, worming its way past the interlacing fingers of his ribs. There, at last, is his heart. Blood spills between shoulder blades, dark and slick as oil. Achilles smiles as his face strikes the earth. Chapter 33. The sea nymphs come for the body, trailing their sea foam robes behind them. They wash him with rose oil and nectar, and weave flowers through his golden hair. The myrmidons build him a pyre, and he is placed on it. The nymphs weep as the flames consume him, his beautiful body lost to bones and grey ash. But many do not weep. Briseis, who stands watching until the last embers have gone out. Thetis, her spine straight, black hair loose and snaky in the wind. The men, kings and common. They gather at a distance, afraid of the eerie keening of the nymphs and Thetis's thunderbolt eyes. Closest to tears is Ajax, leg bandaged and healing. But perhaps he is just thinking of his own long-awaited promotion. The pyre burns itself out. If the ashes are not gathered soon, they will be lost to the winds, but Thetis, whose office it is, does not move. At last, Odysseus is sent to speak with her. He kneels. Goddess, we would know your will. Shall we collect the ashes? She turns to look at him. Perhaps there is grief in her eyes, perhaps not. It is impossible to say.
Collect them. Bury them. I have done all I will do.
He inclines his head. Great Thetis, your son wished that his ashes be placed.
I know what he wished. Do as you please. It is not my concern.
Servant girls are sent to collect the ashes. They carry them to the golden urn where I rest. Will I feel his ashes as they fall against mine? I think of the snowflakes on Pelion, cold on our red cheeks. The yearning for him is like hunger, hollowing me. Somewhere his soul waits, but it is nowhere I can reach. Bury us, and mark our names above. Let us be free. His ashes settle among mine, and I feel nothing. Agamemnon calls a council to discuss the tomb they will build.
We should put it on the field where he fell,
Nestor says. Machaon shakes his head. It will be more central on the beach, by the agora.
That's the last thing we want, tripping over it every day,
Diomedes says. On the hill, I think. The ridge by their camp, Odysseus says. Wherever, wherever, wherever. I have come to take my father's place. The clear voice cuts across the room. The heads of the kings twist towards the tent flap. A boy stands framed in the tent's doorway. His hair is bright red, the colour of the fire's crust. He is beautiful, but coldly so, a winter's morning. Only the dullest would not know which father he means. It is stamped on every line of his face, so close it tears at me. Just his chin is different, angling sharply down to a point as his mother's did. I am the son of Achilles, he announces. The kings are staring. Most did not even know Achilles had a child. Only Odysseus has the wits to speak. May we know the name of Achilles' son? My name is Neoptolemus, called Pyrrhus. Fire, but there is nothing of flame about him beyond his hair. Where is my father's seat? Idomeneus has taken it. He rises. Here. Pyrrhus's eyes rake over the Cretan king. I pardon your presumption. You did not know I was coming. He sits. Lord of Mycenae? Lord of Sparta? The slightest incline of his head. I offer myself to your army. Agamemnon's face is caught between disbelief and displeasure. He had thought he was done with Achilles, and the boy's effect is strange, unnerving.
You do not seem old enough.
12. He is 12. I have lived with the gods beneath the sea, he says. I have drunk their nectar and feasted on ambrosia. I come now to win the war for you. The fates have said that Troy will not fall without me.
What?
Agamemnon is aghast. If it is so, we are indeed glad to have you, Menelaus says. We were talking of your father's tomb and where to build it. On the hill, Odysseus says. Menelaus nods. A fitting place for them. Then, there is a slight pause. Your father and his companion, Patroclus. And why should this man be buried beside Aristosarchion? The air is thick. They are all waiting to hear Menelaus's answer.
It was your father's wish, Prince Neoptolemus, that their ashes be placed together. We cannot bury one without the other.
Pyrrhus lifts his sharp chin. A slave has no place in his master's tomb. If the ashes are together, it cannot be undone. But I will not allow my father's fame to be diminished. The monument is for him alone. Do not let it be so. Do not leave me here without him. The kings exchange glances.
Very well, Agamemnon says. It shall be as you say.
I am air and thought and can do nothing. The greater the monument, the greater the man. The stone the Greeks quarry for his grave is huge and white, stretching up to the sky. Achilles, it reads. It will stand for him and speak to all who pass. He lived and died, and lives again in memory. Pyrrhus's banners bear the emblem of Skyros, his mother's land, not Phthia. His soldiers too are from Skyros. Dutifully, Automedon lines up the Myrmidons and the women in welcome. They watch him make his way up the shore, his gleaming, new-minted troops, his red-gold hair like a flame against the blue of the sky. I am the son of Achilles, he tells them. I claim you as my inheritance and birthright. Your loyalty is mine now. His eyes fix upon a woman who stands, eyes down, her hands folded. He goes to her and lifts her chin in his hand. What's your name? He asks. Briseis. I've heard of you, he says. You were the reason my father stopped fighting. That night he sends his guards for her. They hold her arms as they walk her to the tent. Her head is bowed in submission, and she does not struggle. The tent flap opens and she is pushed through. Pyrrhus lounges in a chair, one leg dangling carelessly off the side. Achilles might have sat that way once, but his eyes were never like that. Empty as the endless depths of black ocean, filled with nothing but the bloodless bodies of fish. She kneels. My lord, my father broke with the army for you. You must have been a good bed-slave. Briseis' eyes are at their darkest and most veiled. You honor me, my lord, to say so. But I do not believe it was for me he refused to fight. Why then, in your slave's opinion? A precise eyebrow lifts. It is terrifying to watch him speak to her. He is like a snake. You do not know where he will strike. I was a war prize, and Agamemnon dishonored him in taking me, that is all. Were you not his bed-slave? No, my lord. Enough. His voice is sharp. Do not lie to me again. You are the best woman in the camp. You were his. Her shoulders have crept up a little. I would not have you think better of me than I deserve. I was never so fortunate. Why? What is wrong with you? She hesitates. My lord, have you heard of the man who is buried with your father? His face goes flat. Of course I have not heard of him. He is no one. Yet your father loved him well and honored him. He would be well pleased to know they were buried together. He had no need of me. Pyrrhus stares at her.
My lord?
Silence. The word cracks over her like a lash. I will teach you what it means to lie to Aristosician. He stands. Come here. He is only 12, but he does not look it. He has the body of a man. Her eyes are wide.
My lord, I am sorry I have displeased you. You may ask anyone, Phoenix or Automedon. They will say I am not lying.
I have given you an order. She stands, her hands fumbling in the folds of her dress. Run, I whisper. Do not go to him. But she goes.
My lord, what would you have of me?
He steps to her, eyes glittering. Whatever I want. I cannot see where the blade comes from. It is in her hand, and then it is swinging down on him. But she has never killed a man before. She does not know how hard you need to drive it, nor with what conviction. And he is quick, twisting away already. The blade splits the skin, scoring it in a jagged line, but does not sink. He smacks her viciously to the ground. She throws the knife at his face and runs. She erupts from the tent, past the 2 slow hands of the guards, down the beach and into the sea. Behind her is Pyrrhus, tunic gashed open, bleeding across his stomach. He stands beside the bewildered guards and calmly takes the spear from one of their hands. Throw it, a guard urges, for she has passed the breakers now. A moment, Pyrrhus murmurs. Her limbs lift into the grey waves like the steady beats of wings. She has always been the strongest swimmer of the 3 of us. She used to swear she'd gone to Tenedos once, 2 hours by boat. I feel wild triumph as she pulls farther and farther from shore. The only man whose spear could have reached her is dead. She is free. The only man, but that man's son. The spear flies from the top of the beach, soundless and precise. Its point hits her back like a stone tossed onto a floating leaf. The gulp of black water swallows her whole. Phoenix sends a man out, a diver, to look for her body, but he does not find it. Maybe her gods are kinder than ours, and she will find rest. I would give my life again to make it so. The prophecy told truly. Now that Pyrrhus has come, Troy falls. He does not do it alone, of course. There is the horse, and Odysseus's plan, and a whole army besides, but he is the one who kills Priam. He is the one who hunts down Hector's wife Andromache, hiding in a cellar with her son. He plucks the child from her arms and dashes his head against the stone of the walls, so hard the skull shatters like a rotted fruit. Even Agamemnon blanched when he heard. The bones of the city are cracked and sucked dry. The Greek kings stuff their holds with its gold columns and princesses. Quicker than I could have imagined possible, they pack the camp, all the tents rolled and stowed, the food killed and stored. The beach is stripped clean like a well-picked carcass. I haunt their dreams. Do not leave, I beg them, not until you have given me peace. But if anyone hears, they do not answer. Pyrrhus wishes a final sacrifice for his father the evening before they sail. The kings gather by the tomb, and Pyrrhus presides with his royal prisoners at his heels, Andromache and Queen Hecuba, and the young princess Polyxena. He trails them everywhere he goes now in perpetual triumph. Calchas leads a white heifer to the tomb's base, but when he reaches for the knife, Pyrrhus stops him. A single heifer? Is this all? The same you would do for any man? My father was Aristosician. He was the best of you, and his son has proven better still, yet you stint us. Pyrrhus's hand closes on the shapeless, blowing dress of the Princess Polyxena and yanks her towards the altar. This is what my father's soul deserves. He will not. He dare not. As if in answer, Pyrrhus smiles. Achilles is pleased, he says, and tears open her throat. I can taste it still, the gush of salt and iron. It seeped into the grass where we are buried and choked me. The dead are supposed to crave blood, but not like this. Not like this. The Greeks leave tomorrow, and I am desperate. Odysseus. He sleeps lightly, eyelids fluttering. Odysseus, listen to me. He twitches. Even in sleep he is not at rest. When you came to him for help, I answered you. Will you not answer me now? You know what he was to me. You saw before you brought us here. Our peace is on your head. My apologies for bothering you so late, Prince Pyrrhus. He offers his easiest smile. I do not sleep, Pyrrhus says. How convenient. No wonder you get so much more done than the rest of us. Pyrrhus watches him with narrowed eyes. He cannot tell if he is being mocked. Wine? Odysseus holds up a skin. I suppose. Pyrrhus jerks his chin at 2 goblets. Leave us, he says to Andromache. While she gathers her clothes, Odysseus pours. Well, you must be pleased with all you have done here. Hero by 13. Not many men can say so. No other men. The voice is cold. What do you want? I am afraid I have been prompted by a rare stirring of guilt. Oh? We sail tomorrow and leave many Greek dead behind us. All of them are properly buried with a name to mark their memory. All but one. I am not a pious man, but I do not like to think of souls wandering among the living. I like to take my ease unmolested by restless spirits. Pyrrhus listens, his lips drawn back in faint habitual distaste. I cannot say I was your father's friend, nor he mine, but I admired his skill and valued him as a soldier. And in 10 years, you get to know a man, even if you don't wish to. So I can tell you now that I do not believe he would want Patroclus to be forgotten. Pyrrhus stiffens. Did he say so? He asked that their ashes be placed together. He asked that they be buried as one. In the spirit of this, I think we can say he wished it. For the first time I am grateful for his cleverness. I am his son. I am the one who says what his spirit wishes for. Which is why I came to you. I have no stake in this. I am only an honest man who likes to see right done. Is it right that my father's fame should be diminished, tainted by a commoner? Patroclus was no commoner. He was born a prince and exiled. He served bravely in our army, and many men admired him. He killed Sarpedon, second only to Hector. In my father's armor, with my father's fame. He has none of his own. Odysseus inclines his head. True. But fame is a strange thing. Some men gain glory after they die, while others fade. What is admired in one generation is abhorred in another. He spread his broad hands. We cannot say who will survive the holocaust of memory. Who knows? He smiles. Perhaps one day even I will be famous, perhaps more famous than you. I doubt it. Odysseus shrugs. We cannot say. We are men only, a brief flare of the torch. Those to come may raise us or lower us as they please. Patroclus may be such as will rise in the future. He is not. Then it would be a good deed. A deed of charity and piety, to honor your father, and let a dead man rest. He is a blot on my father's honor, and a blot on mine. I will not allow it. Take your sour wine and go. Pyrrhus's words are sharp as breaking sticks. Odysseus stands but does not go. Do you have a wife? He asks. Of course not. I have a wife. I have not seen her for 10 years. I do not know if she is dead or if I will die before I can return to her. I had thought, always, that his wife was a joke, a fiction. But his voice is not mild now. Each word comes slowly, as if it must be brought from a great depth. My consolation is that we will be together in the underworld, that we will meet again there, if not in this life. I would not wish to be there without her. My father had no such wife, Pyrrhus says. Odysseus looks at the young man's implacable face. I have done my best, he says. Let it be remembered. I tried. I remember. The Greeks sail and take my hope with them. I cannot follow. I am tied to this earth where my ashes lie. I curl myself around the stone obelisk of his tomb. Perhaps it is cool to the touch, perhaps warm. I cannot tell. Achilles, it says, and nothing more. He has gone to the underworld, and I am here. People come to see his grave. Some hang back as if they are afraid his ghost will rise and challenge them. Others stand at the base to look at the scenes of his life carved on the stone. They are a little hastily done, but clear enough. Achilles killing Memnon, killing Hector, killing Penthesilea. Nothing but death. This is how Pyrrhus's tomb might look. Is this how he will be remembered? Thetis comes. I watch her, withering the grass where she stands. I have not felt such hatred for her in a long time. She made Pyrrhus, and loved him more than Achilles. She is looking at the scenes on the tomb, death after death. She reaches as if she will touch them. I cannot bear it. Thetis, I say. Her hand jerks back. She vanishes. Later she returns. Thetis. She does not react, only stands, looking at her son's tomb. I am buried here, in your son's grave. She says nothing, does nothing, she does not hear. Every day she comes. She sits at the tomb's base, and it seems that I can feel her cold through the earth, the slight searing smell of salt. I cannot make her leave, but I can hate her. You said that Chiron ruined him. You are a goddess, and cold, and know nothing. You are the one who ruined him. Look at how he will be remembered now, killing Hector, killing Troilus, for things he did cruelly in his grief. Her face is like stone itself. It does not move. The days rise and fall. Perhaps such things pass for virtue among the gods, but how is there glory in taking a life? We die so easily. Would you make him another Pyrrhus? Let the stories of him be something more. What more? She says. For once I am not afraid. What else can she do to me? Returning Hector's body to Priam, I say. That should be remembered. She is silent for a long time. And his skill with the lyre, his beautiful voice. She seems to be waiting. The girls, he took them so that they would not suffer at another king's hands. That was your doing. Why are you not with Pyrrhus? Something flickers in her eyes. He is dead. I am fiercely glad. How? It is a command almost. He was killed by Agamemnon's son. For what? She does not answer for some time. He stole his bride and ravished her. Whatever I want, he said to Briseis. Was this the son you preferred to Achilles? Her mouth tightens. Have you no more memories? I am made of memories. Speak then. I almost refuse, but the ache for him is stronger than my anger. I want to speak of something not dead or divine. I want him to live. At first it is strange. I am used to keeping him from her, to hoarding him for myself. But the memories well up like spring water, faster than I can hold them back. They do not come as words, but like dreams, rising as scent from the rain-wet earth. This, I say, this and this. The way his hair looked in summer sun, his face when he ran, his eyes, solemn as an owl at lessons. This and this and this. So many moments of happiness, crowding forward. She closes her eyes. The skin over them is the colour of sand in winter. She listens, and she too remembers. She remembers standing on a beach, hair black and long as a horse's tail, slate-grey waves smash against rocks, then a mortal's hands, brutal and bruising on her polished skin, the sand scraping her raw and the tearing inside. The gods after tying her to him. She remembers feeling the child within her, luminous in the dark of her womb. She repeats to herself the prophecy that the 3 old women spoke to her. Your son will be greater than his father. The other gods had recoiled to hear it. They knew what powerful sons do to their fathers. Zeus's thunderbolts still smell of singed flesh and patricide. They gave her to a mortal, trying to shackle the child's power, dilute him with humanity, diminish him. She rests her hand on her stomach, feels him swimming within. It is her blood that will make him strong. But not strong enough. I am a mortal, he screams at her, his face blotchy and sodden and dull. Why do you not go to him? I cannot. The pain in her voice is like something tearing. I cannot go beneath the earth. The underworld, with its cavernous gloom and fluttering souls where only the dead may walk. This is all that is left, she says, her eyes still fixed on the monument, an eternity of stone. I conjure the boy I knew, Achilles, grinning as the figs blur in his hands, his green eyes laughing into mine. Catch, he says. Achilles outlined against the sky, hanging from a branch over the river. The thick warmth of his sleepy breath against my ear. If you have to go, I will go with you. My fears forgotten in the golden harbour of his arms. The memories come and come. She listens, staring into the grain of the stone. We are all there, goddess and mortal, and the boy who was both. The sun is setting over the sea,